This is Agriculture Today. We are back now for our weekly grain market update with K-State grain market economist Dan O'Brien. So Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Samantha.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start with cash and futures as we always do. Harvest is on. And from what you've said, 50% of corn has already been harvested.
Yes, according to the latest USDA NASS crop progress report, at the start of this past week, we had 50% of the Kansas corn crop harvested, and of course that's probably almost a large majority of the non-irrigated land out in the west and other parts of the state, and of course most of the irrigation is western half, south central, north central, and environs to the west. And now we're also getting into the irrigated cropland. Of course, that'd be in most cases there'll be a little higher moisture, a little slower to draw down, and so that's what's coming on for the rest of the time. Also, just in driving around the state, we're harvesting grain sorghum in some places, a little bit slower probably than the dryland corn. Sometimes a little slower maturing, but I guess there's hope for grain sorghum to come through where the corn may have been damaged all that much tougher. So we'll see how the statewide yields come about, and the bids that as we come into the harvest time period, normally when we have an abundant harvest, we see a real weakness in cash prices, and we've seen that corn futures continue to trade basically sideways. Closed yesterday on Thursday, the 6th of October at 675.5, and still trading in a range of about $6.60 to $7. So 675.5, just right in the middle of that, just bouncing around some. And basis bids for corn across the state, Colby at $1 over, Deese corn at $7.75. The same for Salina. Hutchinson $1.05 over. Columbus, the best bid in that area, is also $1 over at $7.75. 55 over at Topeka, and in the Garden City area, top bid. And there's in Garden City in the last few days, there's been a real diversity of bids, but the top bid that's available is $8.21 that I could see publicly, went to verify it online off these same sources, $1.46 over. So again, that you're seeing that demand center really come in strong for bids. I think you and I were talking also on air. There's the KSU summary, the Kansas Beef Feedlot summary for the month of August, put out by Justin Wagner down in the Garden City office of Kansas K-State Research and Extension, showed a range of bids from at feedlots of what they paid for corn, $7.85 up to $10.05, average price $8.69. And as we were surmising coming into that $10.05 very well could be rail originated grain brought in quantity. I understand there have been some trains that have come into the region, and just wouldn't be surprised that that's on the top end like that. That's probably could very likely rail influence. So quite the situation. I would say also grain sorghum bids also strong, running every one of them positive. The strongest ones again down in the Garden City region at 61 over, Colby at 55 over, 730, 736, and really bids ranging from just under $7 to about 706 in other parts of the state. So strong bids. Wheat bids holding up pretty well. Hopefully we have time to talk about that in a little bit. We've seen pretty strong exports here in the U.S. for wheat. I think we're running 4 weeks in a row now of over 20 million bushels per week in actual shipments, and actually it's more like 23 to 25 in that range. And we need about 16, 17 million bushels to actually meet the USDA's projections. So that, there's a WASDE report coming out next Wednesday. Very likely we could see an increase in the USDA's projection of wheat exports given this pace that we're seeing. So something to watch. There are other aspects of that WASDE report that we'll get to, but would also mention for soybeans, just a lot of variability and gyrations going on in that market. You do see the strongest bids in the in Hutchinson at 1377, 19 over, 1369 in Columbus, 11 over. Other parts of the state not bad, particularly Topeka, Salina, a little weaker out to the west. The weakest in Colby at 80 under, Garden City at 45 under. So I guess for a grain market economist like myself, and you see this diversity of bids around the state, you start to match that up with, well, are they an export region? Are they a cattle feeding region? Or do we have ethanol plants that are influencing these? And also, it's kind of humbling to know that I'm looking mainly at the publicly available elevator bids and some of the private bids at feedlots and elsewhere, and other processors may or may not be what at least my eyes can see by my sources. So all of these for feed grains in particular are showing a real worry about having adequate supplies of grain. And now with harvest coming on, there's a strong rush to get hold of to secure supplies, to pay really prices that aren't $4 or $5 or $6. We're paying 7, 8, 9, and as we witnessed 10 in some cases. So tough situation with this drought, and it's really affected us here in our part of the world in particular. One other thing to throw in on that for ethanol plant bids, we also track that, and the two states with the highest bids in the U.S. right now for ethanol plants, at least as they've been published, come out of Kansas. Average bid for the week ending October 6th. Well, most recent set of bids, 775 in Kansas, 728, 729 in Nebraska, 706 in eastern Iowa. But everything else is below 7. So we're right in the heart of it in terms of where the hot markets are, and that's driven by just lack of supply and still strong demand.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of lack of supply, I understand we were talking about, on a global scale earlier, some of these estimates. So we're expecting to see with the latest WASDE report coming out in just a week or so here. Brazil and Argentina, the conditions aren't looking so great in terms of their current growing season. You've seen expectation that the Argentine corn and soybean crops would be lower than the last estimate by the USDA came out in September. Still some about sideways for Brazilian corn in terms of the expectation what will be found Wednesday. Sideways just slightly higher for soybeans. There are some reports that have come out here recently that point towards the possibility of some really dry La Nina associated conditions that could come and impact Argentina in particular and parts of southern Brazil. So we shouldn't be in the business with universities of trying to beat the drum with hyperbole. We don't want to affect the market in any way, but these reports need to be verified. And if we do get parching, dry conditions in that part of the world, that'd be a real issue of all of our commodity markets, and would come right during a time when, frankly, we're really cheerleading for good crops to come in and not drought damage. Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody understands that, it's Kansas at this point, struggling with drought conditions. And from what I understand, it's a lot of tumultuous times that we're going through right now, a lot of volatility. And we normally expect for bases to be leveling off, but we're really not seeing that, obviously, like you've said throughout this program.
Yeah, we're for corn basis in particular, we're looking at the corn basis in Salina and Hutchinson continues central part of the state that we've been following, continue to be pretty strong. Topeka moving a little bit higher in the last week at key locations, moving higher in Hugoton. Again, there's some diversity of bids that are happening right now in that southwest Kansas area among some pretty important locations. And but for Hugoton, you see the basis continuing to improve.
And of course, Yucatan's down closer to Texas and Oklahoma, and it's just that whole region affected. Sideways in Colby at about $1 over, and pretty much sideways in Columbus as well. But all these basis bids now are basically at least $1 over where the highest they've been the last 3 or 4 years. Just again, more indication of the tightness of supplies. And one thing I would like to say, if we have time, is that Wednesday numbers we'll be watching for will particularly be focusing in on will be what the USDA says out of NASS, the National Ag Statistics Service, on the size of these different crops. Corn in particular, the latest USDA report said about an estimated 172.5 bushels per acre as the U.S. average corn estimate. The trade estimate is ahead of this October report is about 472.1 instead of 13.944 billion bushels, down to 13.9. As different reports have come out in the last week or so, some of them started at different places, but almost every one of them has been decreasing as we've got more data in on harvest. So it'd be quite a situation. And soybean yields projected to be about equal to where they were last year. One thing that's just interesting is we generally, from where we're sitting at, we're being kind of, I wouldn't say envious, but incredulous as to the good conditions that we generally have seen in the central and eastern corn belt. But yet it's dry enough back there that their river systems aren't having enough river flow to be able to handle barge traffic. So, and I understand, that the Illinois River in particular has been dry, feeding into Missouri, Mississippi downstream. So what a situation. I guess with that much dryness in that part of the country, I wonder how these crop yields, particularly for soybeans, how that'll work out. That if we had luxurious growing conditions, we wouldn't be worrying about these river flows, but we certainly are seeing them. So still a lot of uncertainty and I guess risk that these crop production amounts that we're looking at right now could go lower and tighten up stocks that much more and raise prices as a result.
Absolutely. Yeah. The drought having effects even further north potentially than we would have thought. Definitely not something that we were hoping to hear. But as you said, we'll see the results of that in the numbers released next Wednesday. But Dan, if listeners are tuning in and they're looking for your entire report that you put out every week, where can they find that
at? We put that out on the Ag Manager website. It's www.agmanager.info. It's out of the K-State Ag Economics Department. It's a data intensive entry. a lot of info there, but it's our best effort to try to put information out on weather, on cash and futures markets. And when reports like this come out, we are dealing with that. We are using the KSU basis information, which is a unique product. I think that can be of help to people. And we also in this latest one have got our own KSU projections of prices and different scenarios and probabilities of outcomes in there too. So what a time! Just lots of volatility and uncertainty. And we're sitting here in early October and we're kind of homing in on where our final outcome will be, but the size of these crops are such a wild card yet that we could have a lot of volatility in October heading into November yet in these markets.
Absolutely. And here we were hoping for some stability here in October, but an excellent resource that we have on agmanager.info, which will be linked in the show notes of today's program, which can be found on agtoday.net. But as always, Dan, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Samantha. Take care.
Absolutely. You as well. Once again, that was Dan O'Brien. He is our grain economist here at K-State, joining us for this week's grain market update. We will be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.